I want to share with you the practicality of walking in the Spirit. So often we talk about walking in the Spirit and it feels very spiritual, and we think about what the fruit of the Spirit is, and we might even attempt to make that fruit happen. But I want to give you sort of an overview of something that the Lord has shared with me over the course of the last, I don't know, year or so. And I've been teaching it personally in much longer sessions than this, but I want to see if I can boil this down to like 3 or 4 minutes. So let's start in John chapter 15. This is Jesus speaking, 15:4. Abide in me and I in you, as the branch cannot bear fruit of itself, except it abide in the vine, no more can ye, except ye abide in me. So if we take this verse and we say, Jesus is saying, look, let me walk with you, remain in you, abide with you, live in you. Let me do this, because you can't do the works that I have for you. You can't do it without my blood. You can't do it without my power. You can't do it without my Spirit. You can't do it on your own. You have to be plugged in to me. You have to be plugged into the vine. So just as a vine, a grapevine has to be plugged in. If you just took that grapevine off and it wasn't plugged into a source and it didn't have water coming through, then the grapes wouldn't be able to produce fruit because there would be no life. It's the same thing if we're not plugged into Him. So then in verse 8, so this is John 15:8, Jesus says, herein is my Father glorified, that ye bear much fruit, so shall ye be my disciples. So now what Jesus is saying is that if you're plugged into me, you're abiding in me, my life is inside of you, you will produce fruit, and in that way, you'll be my disciples. You'll be passing things on. Okay, so just as what I'm doing right now on screen is passing something on, where frankly, most of the people that if you see this, you don't know who I am just because of the algorithm, right? Locally, when I do this, I'm sharing this exact message and folks are able to grow around me. And here's the thing, it's not about me. It's about me being plugged into Him, because over the course of the last couple of years, a huge part of the way that I have grown in this is not just studying His Word on my own, but it's other people who were plugged into Him, and their fruit is me. And it's not just one person, it's multiple people have poured into me. Christ has poured through them into me, and now I have the opportunity to pour into you. And wherever you're at, if this touches you, this can be Christ pouring through others, through me, through the Word, and now through you into others around, and that's fruit and disciples. So I want to jump ahead now to Romans chapter 8. A lot of good stuff in this passage. If I was teaching an hour teaching on this, I'd probably pull some more verses. But I want to go to about verse 9. But ye are not in the flesh, but in the Spirit, if so be that the Spirit of God dwell in you. Now, if any man have not the Spirit of Christ, he is none of his. Now, if we did some logic here, then what we would discover is that if you don't have the Spirit of Christ, you're not following Him. And so if you're not following Him, you're not part of this. But if you're following Him, you therefore should have the Spirit of Christ. So that Spirit of God, Spirit of Christ, Holy Spirit is dwelling inside of you. Verse 10, and if Christ be in you, so we've made the assumption if you follow Christ, He's in you. The body is dead because of sin. So our body is dead, that sinful nature is dead, but the Spirit is life. So in another verse, he says that we are made righteous, we are accounted righteous when we place all of our trust in Him, right? So then verse 11, one of my favorite verses in the whole Word, if the Spirit of Him that raised up Jesus from the dead dwell in you, we've already established that if we follow Him, if we've laid our life down on Him, then this is true. But if the Spirit of Him that raised up Jesus from the dead dwell in you, He that raised up Christ from the dead shall also quicken your mortal bodies by His Spirit that dwelleth in you. So the same Spirit that raised Jesus from being cold stone dead, all right, and by some accounts literally went to the underworld and preached to the people there. He was pulled out of the underworld And with that much power, he wasn't just a dead, lifeless body. He was dead and preaching to the people that had gone before 3 days and quickened by his Spirit. That same Spirit that lifted, that Spirit lives inside you and me. How much power then do we have, not for our own use, but tying it back to John 15, that we are plugged into him, that we may have fruit, that we may have life with him, that we may be disciples. So then the next few verses, let's read 12 through 14. Therefore, brethren, we are debtors not to the flesh, okay, to continue working in sin or trying to work our way out of sin, and to live after the flesh. Verse 13, but if you live after the flesh, ye shall die. But if ye through the Spirit do mortify, meaning kill off the deeds of the body, ye shall live. For as many are led by the Spirit of God, they are the sons of God. So we're led by the Spirit, we're the sons of God. So now I want to jump to Paul's writing in Galatians. This entire passage is powerful, but for the sake of time, I'm going to extract a couple of pieces, but you can read the whole chapter, Galatians chapter 5. So let's go to verse 14. For all the law is fulfilled in one word, even this, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. I firmly believe that when Jesus is talking in John 15, maybe 16 and 17, but I think it's in 15, where he says, if you follow my commandment, if you follow my commandments, then these things will happen. I truly believe that when he says that, and it's even tied to love your neighbor right there in the passage, okay? It may not say love your neighbor, but it says love one, something along the lines of love one another. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. Several places in the word. 1 John ties up all the commandments in loving. If you think about it, all the commandments, if we love, we wouldn't break those commandments, not because we're trying to follow 10 rules or 37 rules, but because we're just acting in love. Verse 15 now looks at the flip side of that. But if ye bite and devour one another, take heed that ye be not consumed one of another. And basically saying, look, you're followers of Christ. You're not acting loving. You're biting and devouring one another. How often do we do that? If I had the time, I could go off on a side trail. You know, when Christians pick apart each other, you know, I look at somebody and go, that thing that you do, that's a sinful thing. And then you look at me and go, that thing that you do is a sinful thing. And of course, we look at it and go, this isn't that bad, right? Or this isn't that bad. We wrap it all up in love. And I'm not talking about heinous stuff. I'm talking about little stuff, like sometimes the words that we use, okay? So you use certain words that might offend me. I might use a word that offends you. We point fingers. That's biting and devouring each other at kind of a light level. But then Paul goes on to say, this I say then in verse 16, walk in the Spirit, and you shall not fulfill the lust of the flesh. Notice he doesn't say that you've got to do this 45-minute routine to kill off the flesh every single day. No, he says, walk in the Spirit. Walk in the Spirit. I'm going to skip verses 17 through 21. It's just a big list of all the things that we do, and you can read it. I'm not hiding it. It's there. You can read it, but for the sake of time, I'm going to skip it. There's a whole list of things that we do in the flesh. And notice that he doesn't say you've got to do this amazing effort to not do those things. Just walk in the Spirit. Side note, one of the things that I've discovered over the course of the last couple of years, prior to this, for 30 years of my life, I spent so much time of my spiritual life and even my earthly life trying to fight off the bad stuff. Okay, some of the habitual stuff. It's just so difficult in the flesh. I was following Jesus, but trying to slay the works of the flesh with my flesh. And it was so hard. And I succeeded sometimes for a month or two or a year. On certain things, I would succeed, and then I would fall again, and I succeed at something else. What I've discovered is that if we're walking in the Spirit, like completely walking in the Spirit, it's impossible to do bad things at the very same time, right? Like here I am. I'm speaking good things to you. And if we're living in the fruit of the Spirit, which I'll read in verse 22 in just a moment, I can't simultaneously think bad thoughts about somebody else. I can't I can't simultaneously commit some habitual sin right now while I'm doing this. So if we're keeping ourselves occupied in the fruit of the Spirit, we will naturally not be fleshy. So Galatians 5:22. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. Against such there is no law. Now, I think sometimes, and this is in my old works-oriented, again, following Jesus, but feeling like I had to earn his approval every single day. And I used to look at the fruit of the Spirit as, okay, I got to go out and work at being loving. I have to work at having joy, right? I would make an effort to have joy. And don't get me wrong, sometimes if I'm feeling kind of crabby and depressed and I run into somebody, I am going to put, Lord help me, I'm almost always going to put on joy. There's another passage somewhere in Paul's writings that says, put on, therefore, maybe the mercies of God. You know, there's a place for us to say, you know what, I don't feel like being nice, I'm just going to do it, okay? However, I don't believe that we should have to strive all the time to be peaceful. I would strive to be long-suffering. I would strive to be gentle. I would strive to have good. I'd strive to have faith. Someone said to me, I don't know, a year ago, they said, look, the fruit of the Spirit, it's all one fruit. And if it's the Spirit, and they didn't say this, but I'll speak this to you. If it's the Spirit and it's all one fruit, and I am living the Spirit, right now I feel pretty loving. And I feel joy, and I feel peace. I feel all of this. I'm willing to be long-suffering and gentle and goodness, and have goodness and faith, and be meek and temperate. The Spirit is flowing in me right now. There's a fruit of the Spirit, and it's the whole fruit of the Spirit. Here's the thing. If we walk in that, and in fact, I've discovered that every single time I think an angry thought, every single time I think an unnice thought, if I just immediately think, what would the Spirit, I already know I have the Spirit in me. Well, what would the Spirit do right now? I go, wait a second. The Spirit would take another breath. The Spirit would be loving. The Spirit would look at this person and go, I wonder what you're going through. I just talked to somebody a few minutes ago that I asked her, hey, how are you doing? I'm doing much better than yesterday. Well, what was rough about yesterday? I just felt sick all day long. I only slept an hour and a half the night before. Now she was kind, but imagine if she'd been crabby to me, and instead, or yesterday, maybe she was crabby to somebody. Right? I had a night where I only slept half an hour a week ago, and I'm not sure I wasn't crabby to somebody the next day. So what if we look at that, and instead of going, wow, you're being crabby and getting into a reactive mode, what if we ask ourselves, I wonder what's going on the other side of the mask? What would the Spirit do? What did Jesus do? Jesus was filled with the Spirit, and when he ran into somebody, and I don't have them all in front of me, and I don't have the word well memorized, but you know, somebody would come up to him, and maybe he was blind, and the person would come up to him and say, hey, Lord Jesus, help me, and Jesus would go, what do you want me to do for you? Right? Jesus may have known he was blind or not, right? Or Jesus may have known, whatever the case is. What do you want? What do you want me to do for you? What if we did the same thing? Somebody comes up to me that is having a bad day, right? Can I ask myself in the Spirit what's going on behind the mask? Or maybe I just genuinely don't care. Maybe I go, I'm just going to accept that anything's going on behind the mask. Can I not live the fruit of the Spirit? Okay, so let's tie this up here. So verses 25 and 26 say, if we live in the Spirit, let us walk in the Spirit. Now, I've already in this teaching, we've established that he wants to abide in us. We've established he wants to bear much fruit. We have established that by bearing much fruit, we're his disciples. We've established that the Spirit of God lives in us if we follow him. We've established that the same power that raised Christ from the dead lives inside of us, and that we have that power. We've established that if we walk in the Spirit, we won't fulfill the lust of the flesh. We have established that the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. We have established that if we live in the Spirit, let's walk in the Spirit. Okay, so then the final thing to tie all this together, and I want to be very, very careful that I'm not bridging to a place of works, okay? But Paul offered many different lists of things we can do to be hospitable and loving. And again, I want to be very careful. I'm not submitting that we should step into works, but if we're questioning ourselves, well, what can I do if I'm walking in the Spirit? Verse 26 says, let us not be desirous of vainglory, provoking one another, envying one another. Okay. And then there's several places, Romans 12, I believe, where there's a list of things that we can do. I'll take a peek at it, but for the sake of time, I won't read it. You can read it. It's Romans 12 verses, really the whole entire chapter. He talks about, let's just read a few verses. I feel compelled to just finish, but on the other hand, I feel like this belongs here. Romans 12:10, be kindly affectioned one to another with brotherly love and honor, preferring one another. Not slothful in business, fervent in spirit, serving the Lord, rejoicing in hope, patient in tribulation, continuing instant in prayer, distributing to the necessity of saints, helping other people out, given to hospitality. Bless with them which persecute you, bless and curse not. So I'm going to stop there. You can read them. And if you read in Ephesians, I think Philippians, Galatians, there's exhortations of things for us to do. And I don't believe Paul put those exhortations in there to give us a list of new commandments. They're just practical ways to walk out the Spirit. So folks, let's do a quick review here. Jesus wants to abide in us. If we allow him to abide in us, then his fruit will remain. It comes through us. As his fruit comes through us, we're his disciples. We're sharing just like I'm sharing with you, just like other people have poured into me over the last couple of years, just like others have poured into you. I'm pouring into you. You can take this out and pour this or something else into other people. It is a rivers of living water. It flows through me. It flows through you. It flows through others, and it flows through you to somebody else today. They're encouraged. They flow through to somebody else. The Spirit of God lives in you. If the Spirit of God that raised Jesus from the dead lives in you, my goodness, what kind of power do you have? If you walk in the Spirit, you won't fulfill the lust of the flesh. If you walk in the Spirit, you'll have the fruit of the Spirit, which is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, and temperance. And then if we walk in the Spirit, if we live in the Spirit, we walk in the Spirit, then we will naturally do these things in brotherly love, not out of commandment. Folks, let me go ahead and wrap this up a little bit longer than I had anticipated. If anything in this was helpful to you, would you be so kind as to comment below? Then it doesn't feel like I'm talking at you. It's really us flowing through. Maybe if you'd comment below something that you got out of this, it would bless my heart. And then also, if you'd maybe comment how you're going to pour out later today to somebody else, or even give a testimony of how you poured in to somebody else yesterday, that would just mean so very much to me. I love you in the Lord. Father, I ask that you'll bless the hearer today and that they'll produce fruit today in you, not through striving, but through you working through them.